This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
The perception of hunting, has changed. It's our duty now, our responsibility as hunters, to change it back. And we've spent the last few decades trying, espousing that message, preaching that message about wildlife conservation. It's fallen on deaf ears, all of our attempts. I think what we have to do is maybe appeal to the emotional side or the visceral side. We have to tell our story. We know what we are. We know how deeply we care about wildlife. It's just the people out there that are voting to get rid of hunting, they don't understand our stories. Sometimes we have to translate it to something that they understand.
Sorry, rough start. Dog's barking. Joe Karpinski, Steve Hamilton. How's it going, boys?
Good, guys. How are you?
It's going well. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
Weird. It's weird to be doing another podcast without Kyle, but he's down in, where is he? Mexico now or something?
Yeah, he's down at a board meeting down in Mexico for WSF. So he's got his other duties away from us.
Yeah, so we get to have some fun hanging out with some cool guys and having some good conversations, eh?
Absolutely.
Not just him.
Not just him. It's our turn. So, yeah, as Steve just mentioned, we're switching things up a bit, and I'll be hosting today, and Steve will be my backup when I fail. So let's just get into it there, Joe.
I'm gonna be the hype man, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Go, yeah, boy, every minute or so.
That works for me. So, Joe, for the folks at home, who are you? Where are you from?
Name's obviously Joe Karpinski. Grew up in Maple Ridge and kind of lived all over the province over the past 10 years and spent quite a bit of time hunting and fishing.
Oh, right on. Now, being in the lower mainland, it's always a little bit difficult. Were you, to get into the hunting world, were you born into it, raised, or adult onset? How did that go?
From as far back as I can remember, my old man was dragging me into the woods. He's got pictures of me when I was 2, 3, out along with him on hunting trips and riding along in the pickup, and same thing, fishing and camping and dragging me out in the boat. And so all I can really remember growing up is every spare chance we had, we were heading out into the wilderness.
That's awesome. Do you have one kind of moment where that happened? Say you were with your old man out in the bush, and just something that happened where it's this is my passion. This is for me. This is what I want to do.
I honestly can't really think of too many specific moments. His passion for the outdoors is obviously extremely instilled in me. He the guy just lights up when he sees animals. Same thing when you hook a fish. It's hard to describe that feeling and excitement, and he was so good at it, and he just loved being there. We were pretty good at fishing, I'll say, over the years. So we definitely always seemed to have quite a bit of action. And he spent a lot of time scouting in summers and finding animals, and we always seemed to have good luck hunting as well. It was just kind of something our family always did and spent a lot of time doing.
Oh, that's awesome. It's hard to beat being raised like that. And your social media definitely shows that fishing kind of comes naturally to you boys, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely handy having a lot of access to it. And, in the lower mainland, there's still lots of opportunities to get out as much as you can. And I mean, we lived a block away from a river growing up. So it was again, elementary school, I remember riding down to the river almost every day with my buddies, fishing for trout or salmon or whatever we could down at the river.
Yeah, that's we had the being from Maple Ridge. I'm sure we were fishing the same spots. Probably crossed paths more than a few times when we were younger and never even realized it. Now my son's down there all the time down in under the bridge. I'm sure you know which bridge if you're riding down to the river. But yeah, no, they're that's awesome. Similar childhood, similar raised the same. That's now I see you're taking that role with your kids coming up there. You got them in the outdoors every chance you get, it seems. How important is that to you?
It's extremely important to me. My wife, she didn't really grow up with the, utilizing the outdoors the same way we did. They did lots of boating and camping and stuff. But like when we got married, it was still kind of new to her, the whole outdoor world. And she didn't really obviously know it to the full extent that, I live it up to be. And, the way the modern world's changing and everything, and you see a lot of people have become a lot more distant from the outdoors. I don't want my kids to not live those same experiences I had, because I feel like they made me I like to think I'm a good person and I try hard and I work hard. And, I feel like you learn a lot of skills out there that you use in everyday life. And I feel like you also learn to appreciate life a little more.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's something about getting the kids out there and having them follow in your footsteps. There's something special about that for sure. Now, let's get into the fun stuff here, because you're kind of a silent killer there. You're always seem to be putting stuff down and doing a pretty good job. At least you make it look like it. So this September, you had a good start to the season, didn't you? What happened there?
Yeah. We set up camp for elk, and we got there at 8 a.m. It was still bow season. I literally threw my stuff in the truck and hiked probably 300 yards and let out my first bugle and had my first response. So I was pretty excited, and we were into them right away. And, morning and night we were talking a lot, and it seemed to just only intensify from there. And it took me a couple days, but, hiking into some pretty nasty terrain, and got lucky and managed to call out my first legal bull. I've, seen a few, had a few chances, but it was pretty awesome to finally get my hands on one and enjoy that experience.
Now, when you're getting lots of talking back and forth, were you getting one of those bugle battles with them and screaming at each other? Because I've been in a few of those, and man, there's no sound I've experienced in BC anyways that can compare to that outside. Like bone chilling.
Yeah, we kind of grew up moose hunting, so elk was kind of new to us. So, we've been doing it for the past 5 years, and last year was the first year we actually took some elk. So there's been some learning experiences along the way, and I'm after lots of trial and error, I found where I've been going, there seems to be a few bulls always around every morning when you first start. And what I do, I listen for the bull who wants to play the most. Some bulls might sound bigger, but if I got a bull who's playing or responding to me every time, I just pick him and I just start going at him. And I'm pretty aggressive with elk hunting, and I try to sound like a couple of elk as I'm crashing my way towards them. I'm definitely not too careful about being super quiet. I try to close the distance the best I can, and the closer I get, kind of more I try to aggravate him with some bugles and try to step on his turf a little bit. And it definitely worked. I had 2 mornings in a row where I had a bull 50 yards in the thick stuff, and I couldn't really get him to commit. And he was kind of chuckling at me, and then, how they do that bark. I think he was basically calling me a wuss because I wouldn't show myself and come all the way into him, because I crashed my whole way into him. And yeah, he ended up barking at me, and then he just ended up turning around and bugling his way away from me. And again, just kind of more learning experiences. And like, he was hung up so close for so long for me. It was probably at least a good 15, 20 minutes. I had him at 50 yards, and I feel like he was just getting tired of me not committing to him, right? And then the next morning, I went again, and I ended up what I think is the same bull anyway. I followed him for probably a K, maybe K and a half, and he kind of like paralleled me for about maybe 300 yards away. And he paralleled me all the way down and over this ridge. And as soon as I got over the ridge into this ravine, I kind of like, I think he was a little slow moving into the ravine, and I caught up to him a little faster. And yeah, he ended up spinning around, and I had him just right pissed off, and finally got a good look at him, and saw the little fork up top. And he's not a super big bull, but he's a nice old mature bull, good 6. And as soon as I got that count, I knew I was going to make it work.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest game changers for me. I've got very limited experience elk hunting, but the first couple of times I tried it, when you're kind of prancing through the woods, being all quiet and stealthy, they tend to shut up and bugger off, because when you think about it, you're a predator, right? You're just trying to sneak in, but when you're bashing through the bush and not really caring about snapping twigs and being a little more aggressive, they tend to stick around.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, like anytime if you've ever called one in, they're not quiet. They're a huge animal, and like they live in, majority of the areas, they're pretty thick bush. So like, they're breaking everything on their way into you and crashing around. And then it is amazing when you get one coming in silent that, like, they just shock you, because how does an animal that big come in so quiet? And generally they're the smaller bulls for what we've seen, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible how stealthy those big boys can get. They just, once they bust you, it's like sound's gone, they disappear. You're like, I don't understand where you've gone. Like, I can see the hillside, you just poof out of there.
Yeah, it's like watching Stranger Things. They just go into the upside down, right? They're gone.
Yeah. So that your elk, you got it down, had all your fun leading up to it. Looked like it. The picture I seen, anyways, looks like it went down in a tough area to get something out. What was that pack out like?
I mean, my brother-in-law is probably still hurting from that pack out, and it was kind of funny afterwards. He mentioned that, he's like, oh, this is probably the worst pack out of my life. And then he mentions another mountain that he hiked the year before. And I laughed. I'm like, oh man, both those involved me dragging you around somewhere. Yeah, it was pretty steep terrain where he ended up dying. And it's probably about 500-600 yards, like straight up. And then you kind of end up on this nice little plateau, and which is just full of brutal deadfall. But the best part about the whole thing was, when I'd shot the bull, I got up to him, and we in-reached my buddy, and he had to come about 1 kilometer over to meet me on the ridge. And when he met me, we're kind of celebrating, and we kind of started, because it was such a thick spot where he died, and big animal, we're not trying to get a decent picture for the memory bank. And I started cutting away some small bushes with a knife to kind of get him out of the way. And I cut right through one of them, and I actually stabbed myself right in the calf muscle, about just over 1 inch deep. And like right away, I'm like, oh man, I just stabbed myself in the leg, and like I'm holding pressure, and I'm like, I got a first aid kit in my bag I always carry. And I lift the pant leg up, and it's obviously a sharp hunting knife, perfect clean cut. And I'm looking, and I can I can see the meat in my calf, and I'm like, this is probably not good. And somehow it didn't bleed too much. I wrapped her up pretty good, and a little tourniquet on, and just below the knee. And we ended up hiking all the way back out to camp, and getting some help and bandage the thing up a little better at camp, and then we ended up hiking all the way back to the bull, and breaking them up and packing them all the way out. And by the time I got back up to camp the second time, pants are pretty bloody, and but he was kind of at least stopped bleeding by the time we got back up, and things were okay. And it was definitely not the best scene, but good reminder for everybody to pack a decent first aid kit in your pack, not just the truck, because you never know what can happen out there. And once we got back to camp, we cleaned it up pretty good, and my dad had some crazy glue, and we patched her up, and it's been all right. There was definitely a little bit of kind of internal bleeding that kind of ended up showing through, and from about my knee down to my ankle, but no, I've got it all checked out since, and everything looks okay.
Awesome. What kind of pack were you running?
I run a Mystery Ranch Marshall. I've had that thing for probably 7 or 8 years now, and it's hauled out a lot of animals, and it's never ever bothered me. I absolutely love it.
It's a good reminder, though, for the first aid kit. That's something that a lot of people just overlook, right? They've got a great one that sits back at camp or in their truck, and when you're in the bush, a couple of K, all of a sudden it's a bit of a nightmare if you've got to deal with something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It can happen fast, like just a quick a dumb thing to do, and obviously cut away from you too, right? Just like you're supposed to. But yeah, quick lesson learned for sure that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, sometimes that excitement takes over, and you live and learn, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what? I see a nice deer on the wall back there. You got a story behind that guy?
That's actually one of my old man's bucks. He downsized his nice big house into a little rancher, and he's a quite accomplished hunter himself, and he's doesn't have the wall space, so this one gets to hide with me. I got a couple others in here, a couple whitetails, and but this is just this is my little hunting room I got here that I have too much stuff in, and the big boys hide upstairs.
Perfect. Now let's get into the one thing we all love and what brings us all together: sheep. You had, not last year, the year before, was it your first sheep hunt? You guys doubled down. Start on the top of that. Was a hike-in, fly-in? What's going on with that?
We did a hike-in trip. There was 4 of us, and we kind of had our area picked out. One of our friends had been in there before, so it was nice to have some local knowledge of the area, and I think he'd been in there 3 times. Knew there was lots of sheep in there. He had taken one ram before. We ended up hiking in. It's, I think it was about 16K up into the back end, and we kind of split up at the bottom of this big drainage, and they kind of went to the one mountain range and we went to the other. And they actually got lucky opening morning, and they shot a nice 7-year-old ram. I think it was about 2 inches over the nose, like beauty flare, nice curl. It was actually quite shocking. Like, we hiked in, but there were some guys that were flying in from another area, and it was a lot busier up there than I obviously had hoped. We actually ended up on a mountain where there was 2 other guys, so we kind of had a conversation that morning, and we kind of went separate ways, and we went to go hunt on the backside, which I think, we were brand new to sheep hunting. For stones, we'd done, the bighorns a little bit, and, we spent a lot of time mule deer hunting, and, we got them figured out pretty well, to the point where, we get a little pickier when it comes to what we're taking. And we're definitely more than okay with, eating tags and, not shooting something. So we kind of went up there with an open mind and knew that like, it's gotta be a for sure sheep for us to take it. And, opening morning, we found ourselves on 11 rams. And I kind of laugh because the one ram, I even say like, I'm like, wow, he's way over the nose. And, they turn and spin. And then I think we watched those sheep for another 3 hours and we just didn't get the right look at them. And we're like, oh, there they go. Watch them walk around the corner and they were gone. And it turned out that those other two campers that we split up from earlier on in the morning, they ended up finding those rams and they ended up taking them. That one big ram, he was totally legal, but just rookie sheep hunters and just, not being positive and not being sure. We're more than okay to just watch them walk away. And, we actually were seeing other bands of rams around. So it was, we were still optimistic. And, as the days started to drag on and we were seeing rams every day, but, nothing like that one. And, we just started to lose a little bit of faith, I guess, in the mountain we had picked and figured we had to blew our chance. And I think it was on day 6. I was kind of glassing some adjacent mountains and it was through this big valley, thick forest, and then up to this little tiny knob. And there's no other kind of high country around it, but it was like this little barren knob. And I spotted 8 sheep. So set up the spotter. Sure enough, like 2 look really big, but they're probably 2 kilometers away and we can't tell if they're legal or not, of course. But we felt like we had kind of exacerbated our area and we figured let's just go for it. So we kind of packed up camp and went for it. And it took us, I think we got up there, it was probably around 2 hours before dark by the time we got to the knob. And the knob was probably only maybe 700-800 yards long. Like it's just a tiny little bald knob. And we get up there and we're kind of looking where they were. And by the time we got out of the valley, they weren't there. So we're kind of creeping along. And all of a sudden we look and about 400 or 500 yards away, we just see sheep looking over his shoulder on the edge of this little rock face, looking back at us. And then they just kind of trotted down towards the timber. So we kind of hurried up along the backside just to hoping that we can get a look at them at some point or see where they went. And they couldn't see them. And there was kind of like a little blind face that we couldn't see. And I could see one exit chute and he could see the other. My brother, he ran a little further ahead. We were only about maybe 200 yards apart. And we were pretty positive they were still down there. And we kind of like slowly start creeping in on my side to see if I could like maybe push them around the face towards my brother. And I'm creeping, and all of a sudden I look and they're all tucked right at the bottom of this face. And it's like they're so close together, they're almost standing on top of each other. And right away I see one's like clearly legal. They're only maybe 200 yards below me. And at the same time, they kind of saw me and they spun and started running out around the face. And they started coming across the slide. And I kind of like yelled over to my brother. I'm like, get ready, they're coming. And all of a sudden I kind of walked to the top and they're just walking across the slide. And my brother's the kind of guy, he's got to count something 10 times before he's going to take a poke at it. Like, moose, elk, everything. Like he doesn't want to make a mistake. And,
well, that's a good method. Good way to practice.
So anyways, these rams pop out and it was about probably a 60-yard window before they kind of disappeared off the end of the knob into the timber. And I see the ram pop out and like, I know it's him 100%. And cause like none of the other rams were even close to full curl. and he just sauntered his way right across the opening and into the timber. And like, you know, a little disappointed seeing him kind of sneak away, but like, you know, he's got to be sure. And you know, you can't fault the guy for, you know, he's the one pulling the trigger. He's the one who's got to make sure, right? And yeah, they ended up diving into the timber and they were gone. So we kind of backed out and we went and set up camp on the very end of the knob. And it wasn't probably maybe 5-10 minutes before light. All of a sudden we looked at the far end of the knob that we could see, and boom, there's a ram standing there. So we're like, they're back. And, you know, there was kind of last light, only the one ram. We're like, oh, we'll just leave them here. I bet they'll be here in the morning up here. Cause there's almost nowhere to go. That wasn't like, you know, 2-3K of timber until they got to the next mountain almost. So we kind of slept on it, waited them out, and we hiked in first thing in the morning and kind of expected them to be in the same area. There was kind of like a big slide that had a ton of feed. So we figured they'd be there in the mornings, and we were kind of walking slow, and my brother was kind of cutting a little lower, and I went straight up over the top, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden I'm getting almost to the end of the knob, and I'm just walking super slow, and all of a sudden I'd look, and 12 yards away there's a ram bedded looking straight at me, and I'm like busted, like so bad. And I freeze, and then I'm looking, and then all of a sudden I like just see the top of a horn of another one just to his left, and I'm like, there they are, like they're all right here. So I was kind of crouching a bit, and I kind of just popped up and looked straight at them all. They were all like less than 20 yards bedded down, and right away I'm like, there he is, like looking at him eye to eye. And they kind of spilled over this little knob, and then I probably had 80 yards to the timber, and you know, took a poke at him and got him. But yeah, it was just crazy, like being that close, like just a no doubter. It was pretty awesome.
What goes through your head in that moment when you peek your head up and you just see all the rams standing there again? Like, the adrenaline take over, you're like, oh shit, I better, like, it's on now kind of deal? Or what's going through your head at that moment?
I like at that moment, like they knew I was in their kitchen, like, and like I knew they weren't going to stick around. So it was like, you kind of got to react. And like, you know, if I would have ducked back down to hide, he'd already seen me. Like, there's no point hiding again. Cause like Steve was saying, they think you're a predator all of a sudden. Why else would you hide, right? So you kind of like, in those moments, like I do a deer hunt too. Like if I know a deer sees me, I don't hide again. I'll be almost expose myself so they see what I am. And I feel like they're less scared if you go and try to hide again. Like I do a lot of timber hunting, and like, I don't know, they just freeze and kind of look at you if they don't run away, right? So you kind of, sometimes you get an extra look at them, just fully exposing yourself.
Yeah, I found that with blacktails before. If you try to hide again, they're gone. But if you just stand up straight, they're like, oh, I don't know what you are, but you're not going to eat me.
Mm-hmm. Black bears as well, right? It's if you put that little slink in there, they're like, uh-oh, their guard goes up immediately.
Yeah.
So what? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's just kind of a big thing I do when it comes to stalking, is like try to be as less predator like as you can be. And I feel like you see more animals. Like it's kind of a weird concept, because like, you know, you want to be sneaky and stealthy, but like, yeah, I don't know, like one of my best mule deer areas, like you can't sneak into it. It's so thick. But like if you crash your way into them, they're just like, oh, you're a moose, and they just let you walk right into them. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So it's your first real backcountry sheep experience. What's your big takeaways? Things you wish you did differently? Or obviously you were successful, so like you don't wish that. But is there things you wish you brought in with you, or mistakes you made?
I went in with pretty good gear. Definitely have no complaints there. You know, at the time I went in, I was probably only confident to about 400 yards with the rifle. There's definitely more. There's a lot of opportunity if a guy could reach out a little further, but at the same time, with a lot of the topography that you get in sheep country, you can sure it takes a little more effort, but you can sneak around and try to close those distances to try to get it under 400 yards pretty easy from what we've seen anyways. And yeah, I mean, the first year we went in, we didn't have the best spotter. So we upgraded, and me and my brother, he ended up buying a nice Swaro, and going in with my one buddy who had been quite a few times, obviously rationing what you're bringing in. Like, we share a spotter between two guys. We only got one camp stove and one tent, and you try to minimalize everything so everyone's kind of packing the least they can. Definitely helped having some knowledge, from him to kind of help out, and helped us out a lot for sure. Otherwise, we probably would have been packing big pillows and everything else you don't need up there, right?
Yeah, no, it's gear splitting's always handy. To start to get accustomed to that the past few years makes everybody's lives a little easier.
Got fire logs, right? Who carries those?
Yeah, exactly. Whoever draws a short straw. No.
Yeah.
Any advice on someone going for their first sheep hunt? Like, study as much as you can, glass as much as you can, even just head up to local mountains to get your eyes on sheep, practice aging, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely even you jump on the internet and you can find a couple sheep aging quizzes that you can take, and it's definitely tough. Like, there's lots of good YouTube videos out there for guys for aging sheep. I definitely wouldn't call myself an expert by any means still to this day. But there's try to do the best you can, and definitely try to lean on the more conservative edge with counting. And, it's my brother got pretty lucky this year. They stumbled onto an 11-year-old ram. He got his first sheep this year as well, which is pretty incredible. They picked a totally new area on, Google Earth in the river, and find a new place to hike in, and paid dividends. Obviously, they stumbled onto a pretty nice old ram all by himself, and they closed the distance. And I think he took them on day 3 of their sheep hunt, and they picked a new area. It had a lot less sheep, and got lucky. Just found Mr. Right.
So I don't know if you said it before, but when he let you know that he got a ram, so was that after he was in the bush, or you get a inReach message or Zoleo message or something letting you know? You live that excitement with him a bit?
Yeah, he actually borrowed my inReach, and so I was kind of keeping in tabs with him, and I was the odd man out this year on the sheep hunt with a new baby girl at home, and so it was kind of nice to almost feel along for the ride. And me and him spent the past 2 years hunting sheep together, and had definitely a lot of close calls, and definitely would have loved to have been there in person for his first one. But that's kind of nice thing about the satellite devices we have these days is the guys who are sitting at home get a feel part of it a little bit, and kind of they're just kind of be a part of it.
Yeah, no, those are some of my one of my favorite things during hunting season is getting the messages from other people. Actually, it's pretty neat. You open up your phone, it's like they're there in the moment, and you're seeing it's like, oh, you wish you were there, but at the same time you're excited for them, especially if it's your brother, your hunting partner. It's big.
Yeah, totally agree.
Got any future sheep aspirations now that you get the newborn? So you're gonna wait a season or get out later this season before it closes locally?
I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to make it work this year for trying to chase some bighorns around. I'm actually leaving tomorrow night for a mountain goat LEH that I got. So I've been pretty lucky with the LEH system. I've had that draw 3 years now in the past 6 years. So, as much as some people hate the system, some people, I guess, get a little lucky with it sometimes. But
The ones that hate are the ones that don't draw.
yeah, exactly.
There's definitely people. There's definitely people listening right now cursing your name for a goat draw 3 times.
Yeah, I'm sure. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, and spent obviously a little bit of time in the area and know where they should be anyway. So we're hoping to get into them for Friday. But yeah, as far as bighorns go, we'll kind of see how the next couple of weekends go, and obviously most of the time I'm a weekend warrior here, so it see how much time I can get away with, and might drag my little guy up with a pair. I just got him a new little pair of binos, so see if we can get him into seeing some sheep. Would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome when the kids get to lay eyes on things like that. So I always swear by when we do our sheep counts is I always push people with kids. I'm like, just bring them out. If it's the Spence's sheep count, there's almost a guarantee that you can get eyes on sheep that day. Some of our other ones along the Fraser are a little bit tougher. The herds are suffering, but getting the kids out and seeing the sheep, people don't realize they're close to us. They're not as far away as everybody seems to think. But of all your hunting growing up, and you're obviously doing well these past few years, you got a favorite animal to hunt? It's like, what's your go-to? Mine's always been mountain mule deer. So
I've actually was asked that yesterday from I got a new guy at work who's never been hunting before, and I couldn't really give him an answer either. They all kind of have their own draw. Sheep is like, if you're going for thin horns, it's the adventure. Like, none of it's easy. You got to go into some pretty wild terrain, beautiful terrain. Sometimes you see lots, sometimes you don't see much. That goes with any animal, but moose I find they're fun. They're super easy to talk to, and I feel like that's the best animal for beginners to kind of get into, coercing with animals. They seem to play a lot more than elk seem to be pretty wily. There's elk are definitely the most fun because of how vocal they are. Mule deer is just a whole lot of glassing, especially the alpine stuff. You get up high and like I feel like you can just glass forever, and all of a sudden there's one standing there, right? Like they pop out of nowhere. It can be a very frustrating hunt, and I find that a lot with newer hunters that I bring out, that they get super frustrated because you'll be glassing the same bowl for hours and you don't see nothing. Then all of a sudden there's 3 bucks standing there, like they just show up out of nowhere, right? Whereas moose and elk, sure it can happen the same, but it's usually you're hunting thicker country and you can't see as far. And not some guys are in the steeper stuff in the Kootenays or something, and then glassing some alpine, but we've been hunting up north here for far back as I can remember. Like my dad's, he's turning 70 this year, and he's been hunting up in the Peace now since he was moved out from Saskatchewan in his early 20s. It's pretty just awesome spending time and wandering the province, and lots to see, lots to chase.
Yeah. Do you find yourself focusing your hunts on specific areas, or do you try to spread it out amongst the province to get a taste of everything? Because you look at your social media and what you do, it seems like you're all over the place. You're blacktail hunting up in the the coastal mountains, you're whitetail hunting here, you're mule deer hunting there, you're backcountry sheep hunting, you're up in the Peace hunting elk. Like seems like you got a little piece of everything going on there.
Yeah, I think it's, from me living all over this province and kind of learning different areas. And I definitely do. Like I know a couple guys think that I'm always hunting the same spots, but like I literally just pick a new spot and kind of, I'll go, like you say, I'll go whitetail hunting one day, and then I'll be, mule deer hunting the next weekend, and blacktail hunting, and like same thing. Like I have so many, like I was, obviously not married with kids and bound by as much free time as I am these days. So I spent, every weekend, every day off I had out in the bush. If I wasn't fishing, I was scouting. I was putting out trail cameras or learning different areas, looking for sign, going out camping. Lots of people like want to just go into the woods and get something, but it's, sometimes you got to put in that time and learn these areas. And, thankfully I've spent a lot of time doing that, where I kind of have different areas that I know at different times of year are better than others. And, it takes a lot of trial and error to kind of narrow things down. And obviously married with kids and bound by the time that I have, I get luckier than most, it seems, but I've spent a lot of time figuring out those areas to kind of make my time very valuable.
Yeah, big emphasis on getting out there and throughout the year and kind of patterning the animals if you can. So just going in blind always helps to make things a little more successful anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Like some of my mule deer areas, like the deer are literally there all year long, and then I got other areas that aren't too far away. And like, I bet you those deer migrate probably 80K at least, from summer to winter range. Like it's so, I find it so random area to area, like that, they're not that far away, but for whatever reason, some of those little pockets hold deer all year long. Like I got 3 very nice deer, in the past, it's probably 6 years now, 7 years. And, 3 of those big bucks are from like a 300-yard circle that I found that just holds big deer. And it's just a weird little nook that they're just there. It's all year. Like, it's crazy. Like a weird little solitude. Nobody bugs them.
Yeah. Well, we don't mind if you send us those GPS coordinates after either. So,
nope.
Of course.
Yeah. Now, you might not have a moment, but it seems like almost every hunter, especially guys who have been doing it as long as you have that uh-oh moment in the woods. You've got that close call with an animal or a close call with weather where you're just caught off guard, in trouble. Have you ever had a moment that stands out to you? In one in particular, if you got a couple, we're all ears.
On my second stone sheep hunt was probably the scariest moment I've had. Was we were like up near the peak of this one mountain, and black cloud rolling in. We're still kind of glassing, knowing it's going to rain soon. We're all prepared for it, throwing the rain gear and just take the wave. And then all of a sudden, the closer this cloud got, the more lightning started to hit. Like, all of a sudden we're like, we got to get out of here. Like, we're up near the peak, never know what's going to happen, packing our guns. And I could literally feel my gun in my hand and the electricity through it, like as I'm walking. And I was like, right away, I just laid it on the ground and walked away from it. Cause I'm like, piece of metal up this high in the mountain, and like, never know what's going to happen. I work on power lines, for my career, and, don't want to be getting, a bolt of electricity through me that's, from lightning, and be kind of not a funny way to go, but an interesting way to go if getting whacked by lightning and, while playing with power lines all day during work.
That'd make it kind of unique in your situation. Yeah, you're dealing with high voltage, you're a lineman. What's going through your head at that moment? Like you feel that electrical buzz, and I know the buzz you're talking about. I've felt it before, not from lightning, but I've the hair standing up on the back of your hands and your arms and your neck, and you're just you're trained. You're just like, oh, this is not a good situation.
Yeah, you could just feel, like you say, you just feel the, like, this is not good. Like that moment when, like, feeling like you could felt like my gun was charging up, like it was just getting ready to get whacked right in my hand. It was not good. Didn't like it.
Yeah, I can understand that one. Done a few pitch and putts here, walking around with a golf course with a club, and you feel it. It's like, no, I couldn't imagine being in that situation. No, thanks.
Well, just trying to think here. You're raised in the Lower Mainland, so you got some blacktail hunting in your blood too. You got a good blacktail story you're willing to share?
Most of my blacktail hunting, there's definitely some local deer that hang around. I've spent, lots of time looking for blacktails, and spent a lot of time not seeing blacktails. By far the hardest deer to hunt, until you kind of find them. And with blacktails, from my experiences, where trumps how. Like if you're not there where they are, like, you're not going to see them. And like the West Coast terrain, like if there's deer there, like especially once you're in the timber, like you see trails. Like there's so much sign. Like there's not a lot of regrowth here once you're in the timber. So like it's old dark timber, and like a lot of those trails are probably 100 years old, or those deer just always been there. So I've kind of spent time and found some of those areas, and I found a spot. What was that, 2 or 3 years ago? And like lots of trails, and like that's just through trial and error of just literally just pounding the hills with hiking around, and found a spot with a ton of sign. So I set a bunch of trail cameras up, and ended up going back into to pull them in the wintertime that year, and all the deer were in one spot. So I'm like it was so weird. Like, I probably drove 8K a road, and all the deer were in this one spot in the snow, with tracks in the snow. So I'm like, next year comes around, I show up for the rut, and I'm like, well, let's just go walk around here. And literally just started walking around, cut a huge buck track right away. And I'm like, it's this, again, a super steep, ugly, rocky kind of mountain ridge, and typical West Coast terrain. And like I follow the tracks, and he goes right up to the top. And as soon as I get up on top, I'm walking around super slow. It's it's 1.5 feet of salal in the timber, and as soon as I get on top, it's probably 500 yards at the top of the peak, and it kind of flattens out, and I'm creeping through the salal, and I just look 200 yards to my left, and I just see a white face in the salal, and put up my binoculars, and I just see like heavy bases, and that's all I could see. And region 2, any buck, I just see big heavy bases. I'm like, shooter all day long. And I could just see enough of his body, him still laying down, just watching me, and then squeezed one off behind the shoulder, and ended up being like a super big, wide. I think he was 21 inches wide, big 3-point. But again, just putting in the work and, a little bit of scouting and put me right into that area. And, again, for myself, lucked into another really nice buck.
You use the term luck, but you do put in the work. You're a deserving guy for sure. There's no question. You're always out there. You're putting in the pre-scouting, like you said. You looked the year before. You had your cameras out. And then what you say. I've heard a saying about blacktail hunting a few times where it's 10% of the deer are in 90% of the area, and then 90% of the deer are in 10% of the area. You just gotta find that pocket. You found that pocket, and you probably got a spot you've been back to a few times, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I think we've taken 3 deer out of that little pocket now. And like you say, we have another pocket locally here that is pretty bountiful, it seems, with the amount of deer walking around in that. And my brother arrowed a nice buck in there last year, which is the first year we've actually taken out of that area. But there's 2 really nice deer still hiding in there. One's got a super goofy frame that, like, I'm assuming his horn base or something must be messed up, but his antler's almost like a wave. It's super weird, but he's a weird little 4-point. But super cool, unique buck.
Right on. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Joe. It's good, almost a hunter session, shoot the shit kind of deal. It was really enjoyable for me. Hopefully, Steve enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, totally. Quiet. Oh yeah, I was the hype man. Yeah, boy. Yeah, it was awesome. I always enjoy getting to hear actual on the ground stories, right? So that was awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.